With huge computation, massive amount of data are generated. This is particularly true in cloud infrastructure, highly scalable context. This implies we'll need a database provided for our infrastructure that's sturdy and dependable enough to handle the daily variable traffic to and from it. Under the AWS Database Service domain, Amazon AWS offers a variety of such database as a set of managed services. Through this course, you will understand why do you need an AWS database, Amazon AWS database benefits, AWS database types. So without any further ado, let's get started right away. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I want to request you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any new update or video releases from Great Learning. If you enjoyed this video, show us some love and like this video. Knowledge increases by sharing, so make sure you share this video with your friends and colleagues. Make sure to comment on the video for any query or suggestions and I will respond to your comments.
So guys, now when you talk about AWS services, AWS offers storage services, compute services, management services, monitoring services, right? It provides machine learning, DevOps, and a number of other services. One important service that it offers is your database services, right? So when you talk about databases, guys, there are a lot of pointers that we need to explore. Okay. So talking about databases in general, right? So what databases do is they basically let you hold your data, right? Storage services let you store your data. Databases is something that lets you, when you talk about databases, right, they let you hold data that can be processed, right? They give you processing capabilities as well. So databases are very important, right? Because you can process your data there, something that is very important. The databases can be relational in nature, non-relational in nature, right? I mean, whether you talk about structured databases, unstructured databases, the types are plenty. On AWS, there are quite a few services that let you spawn or manage these databases. Now, when you talk about AWS services, they are not databases. Those are services that lets you create or support or manage databases. Okay. So there are two important pointers, two important things that you see on the screen. One is your AWS managed database. The other one is your self-managed database, right? So if you talk about an on-premise infrastructure, this is where you have your self-managed databases. So an important point about AWS is it does not force you to actually go ahead and configure your resources, right? It's not always that you have to go ahead and manage your own resources, right? That is the plus point of using AWS. And when you talk about databases, it is no different. So if you talk about your self-managed databases, there are a lot of things that you'll be doing on your own. You can see on the screen, right? You have to manage, backup your databases, right? Take care of replications, security, OS, and server. So just like if you talk about different service models, right? When you talk about service models, there is a part of things that you control and part of things that your vendor controls. Say, for example, when you talk about platform as a service, right? So the entire platform is managed by a vendor. All you manage is your data and your applications, right? But if you talk about your infrastructure as a service, only the infrastructure is managed by your vendor. Say, for example, he or she or the vendor basically manages your security concerns, your networking concerns, right? It takes care of all those things, right? Even the middleware that is being provided to you. What you are concerned with is deciding what kind of operating system you want to launch and what kind of applications you would be running on top of it, right? The other configuration part is managed by your instance provider or your vendor, in this case, vendor, right? So when you talk about databases, it is similar, right? If you are to do it on yourself, first you'll have to take care of everything. You'll have to put your servers in place, right? You'll have to put forth your patches, your operating system on top of it. Then you'll have to actually go ahead and have your servers being set up. Those servers, you'll have to manage it, take care of everything that is there for the servers and also for the databases. Have database backed up properly, get proper replication of all the data, take care of all the security concerns and operating systems as well, right? And then, as I've mentioned, you have to manage the servers as well. So this can be a tricky task. With AWS, you can decide how do you want to manage these instances. Do you want to do Do you want to set up the infrastructure by yourself? Do you want to control some of these factors? Or do you want to lend all of these to your vendor, right? So when you say shared security model, AWS basically supports security principles as well. It gives you control over what security parameters you want to take control of and what do you want the vendor to handle for you. So when you say that your vendor is handling a certain set of services for you, right? So in that case, he's keeping those services secure for sure. Okay. So when you talk about security as well, even the security part can be decided as in, do you want the vendor to control it or do you want you to control it yourself? So when you talk about managed databases, AWS gives you this freedom as in, do you want to control the infrastructure or do you want everything to be controlled by a vendor itself, even from the platform perspective as well. And you just want to go ahead and put forth your data there. So if you want that, you can actually go ahead and just spawn your database instances and just manage your data on top of it. So you have that much amount of freedom here when you talk about AWS Database Services, right? So when you talk about AWS Database Services, there are quite a few database services that are offered. Now, these database services aren't databases. They are basically something that let you control these databases, unlike your actual database. So you have an option of spawning or choosing certain sets of databases that you want to launch. But these services are not databases. They are services that manage it. Okay. What are these services that AWS has on your plate, right? So this is what the slide says, right? Basically, when you talk about databases, these are critical to dealing with data. And these days, with data that comes in different formats, what we have to do is we need databases that can handle this data. Amazon Web Services provides reliable, relational, and non-relational database instances that are managed by AWS. So what are these database services that you have? It says that relational database, right? So when you talk about relational database service, the most popular one that you see on the screen is your relational database service, RDS, right? So basically it helps you deal with relational databases where your data is structured data, right? Then you have your other database services as well. You have your Redshift. You have your Amazon DynamoDB, which scales like anything. I mean, people say that DynamoDB does not have an upper limit. I mean, it can scale as much as you want. And this is something that has been quoted by people who actually spoke in AWS reInvent. So you can understand how severe the statement is, right? So when you know that it can scale as much as you want, it gives you a lot of freedom, right? Then there are other database services like you have your Kinesis, you have Aurora, right? You have your ElastiCache. So all of these, they have their own features, like whether you want to control data warehousing, whether you want to do data analysis, right? Do you want to have simple relational databases? They have their different capabilities and they support different sorts of storages, right? So let us go ahead and understand these databases a little more before we jump into the demo part, okay? So first on our plates, we have Amazon Relational Database Service, right? Amazon RDS or Relational Database Service, it is easy to set up, scale and operate database service, right? It is cost effective in nature, it is resizable and it can automate basically your administrative tasks, right? So when you say Amazon RDS, right? Yes, all these factors that we read about it are true. Basically, what it does is it lets you set up, operate and scale a relational database in a cloud. And this you can do in just few clicks. When you say few, there are more than few. So there are two options that it offers. One is an easy setup where you don't have to worry about anything. And there's a normal setup where it takes longer for you to set it up, but there you can choose a lot more options that you want to do, right? What are the database engines your RDS supports? I mean, now when you talk about RDS, it supports different database engines as well, right? Because there's no one particular type of database that you handle. It can be your, whether you talk about Amazon's Aurora, right? It supports that as well. Whether you talk about PostgreSQL, SQL, MySQL, MariaDB, Oracle, SQL Server, all of these are handled by it. What are the features it offers? It's really easy to administer, right? It basically can operate with it using the management console, which is nothing but your GUI, right? So with GUI, it is always easier to handle these databases. You can do it through your command line interface as well if you want to. This one scales very easily, right? I mean, whether you talk about compute or storage resources, again, spend like a couple of minutes and it should scale right away. Highly available, highly durable, and it supports multi-AZ deployment as well. So you can deploy your resources in multiple availability zones too. It is very fast, secure, and also it is very inexpensive, right? So this was about RDS, right? We also have Amazon Redshift. So when you say Amazon Redshift, this is another database service that AWS offers, right? So basically, I was mentioning a pointer here saying that if you talk about Amazon or if you talk about AWS databases, they also support your data warehousing requirements as well. And when you talk about database or data warehouse requirements, you have your Amazon Redshift on your plate. Okay. So when you talk about Amazon Redshift, basically it is a fully managed database service. Again, all these databases, the plus point they give you is most of them, they scale up in petabyte scale, right? And they are easy to upscale and downscale. So increasing amount of traffic is not a problem here. Okay. So that is one plus point, right? And the other thing is, you can think of it as a web service, right? As you can see in the definition itself, it is easy to set up, manage, and scale a distributed and cached environment of AWS cloud platforms. You can also connect your Redshift to Amazon QuickSight. Now, when you say Amazon QuickSight, it is a service that lets you do a business intelligence or basically data visualization, just like your Tableau and Power BI. So whatever data you have in your Redshift, you can actually go ahead and move it to Amazon QuickSight as well. That is where you would be able to query or question your data that is there in your hand, right? You can even actually go ahead and connect it to your Amazon Aurora or RDS, right? And you can actually query your Redshift database as well. So it is more or less something that lets you have a database in place. Data warehouse in place, So it is a data warehouse service to which you can connect different database services and even your BI tools to process this data, just like we do in our data warehouse services. So what are the other benefits it gives you? It also connects to your machine learning services like your Amazon SageMaker. Whether you talk about EMR, Amazon Athena, you can connect to all these services, right? And basically do analytics using it as well. Now, if you compare it with other data warehouses or data warehouse services provided by other cloud platforms, right? So AWS confirms or basically makes a claim that it is 3 times faster than any other cloud data warehouse that is there. They believe that the performance is important when you talk about cloud platforms, and that is why they have ensured that it works at that faster paces. And for that, they use a typical kind of instance called as your RA3 instance. Okay. Again, we talked about its speed, and another important point that is supported here is costing wise also it is cheaper compared to other data warehouse cloud services. And if I were to make a claim, it is like they claim at least that it is 50% cheaper. Okay. So this was about Amazon Redshift. Let us go ahead and talk about Amazon Aurora, right? So when you say Amazon Aurora again is a database similar to your RDS, but here it is compatible with your MySQL, right? And apart from MySQL, it supports your PostgreSQL databases as well. Where would you use your Amazon Aurora databases? In case if you require high performance and high availability. In simple words, if you're dealing with enterprise-wide data, this is where your Amazon Aurora would come into picture. Again, it is simple in nature, and the best part about it is very cost effective. Okay. So again, it has those standard benefits like it will give you high performance, right? So when you talk about its throughput, it is like 5x of any standard MySQL database. And if you compare it with PostgreSQL, it is 3 times faster than any other normal PostgreSQL databases. Availability, now you have the option of doing multi-AZ activities here as well. 99.99% available. What this means is in a year's time, even if your databases go down to the max, they will go down for like half hour. That is if they go down, which is rare to happen. Okay. So in a year's time, that is a very big achievement to have. Apart from that, you can actually continuously back up your data to your EC2 instances, to your S3 storage services. You cannot back up your data on instances. That is a compute service, but you can actually back up your data in your storage service. That is your S3 service, right? You can actually encrypt this data as well to ensure that it is secure. So it supports KMS services as well, right? And these databases are fully managed. It is a fully managed service, so you don't have to worry about anything. You can even migrate your data because AWS provides migration support for your Amazon Aurora databases. Okay. So guys, now when you talk about DynamoDB, it is very important because now what DynamoDB does is it basically lets you handle your structured and unstructured data. right? So when you talk about DynamoDB, what it does is it ensures that it handles or provides managed services that deal with NoSQL databases as well. So what is NoSQL? NoSQL stands for not only SQL or SQL, right? So NoSQL is nothing but that kind of databases that handle unstructured data as well. Because your SQL databases will handle your structured data, as simple as that, right? So when you talk about unstructured data, how do you deal with it? For your unstructured data, you would be needing services that basically support data in different formats, and we do not have all those relational principles applied to it. Even if those are applied to those in a different form. Now, these databases basically support big data applications, right? So if you have unstructured data, you can do that. Important point here is, guys, when you talk about big data, you're talking about a huge amount of data. So latency becomes very important here. You do not want latency lags. Who takes care of your latency lags here? It is taken care by your Amazon DynamoDB. Okay. This again can scale at a very good level, right? And it is a key value and document database. So when you say key value database and document database, we are talking about unstructured databases here. So if you worked on big data, these terms would make a lot more sense to you, right? What it also does is it supports low latency, as I mentioned. How does it do that? How does it support your low latency services? Say, for example, if you have certain distributed applications and you require faster access, talk about microsecond latency, which is very less. The second itself is very small, right? So when you talk about microsecond latency, this can be handled by a DynamoDB accelerator. It is called as DAX. Do not mistake it for the Power BI expressions. This is different. This is DynamoDB accelerator, right? It again is a cache, memory cache that lets you ensure that you have microsecond latency as well, right? You do not have to worry about managing your servers here. Why? Because it is serverless in nature. So that is one plus point. So your installations, maintenance, operations of your software, everything is taken care by this serverless service here at your hand. Okay. And it automatically scales to meet your requirements if there are any. So this was about DynamoDB, right? Let us go ahead and understand some other pointers as well. So we have Amazon Kinesis. Now, when you talk about Amazon Kinesis, it is a data analysis service. Okay. Everything happens here, right? You can collect the data, process the data, and do real-time analysis on your streaming data as well. So when you say your streaming data, right, we are talking about that data that is flowing, that is continuous, right? And that can be handled by your Amazon Kinesis. Now, if you ask me, then how does it handle real-time data, right? So if you've talked about real-time data and you know big data applications, right? You know that there are processes like ingesting your data, buffering your data, and processing streaming data in real time, right? So if you talk about Kinesis, it takes care of all these activities. Okay. And it again is a fully managed service. What is it capable of? It is capable of handling video streams. It can help you handle your data streams as well. And you can connect to ML services to basically process and analyze this data that is there in your hand. Okay. If your job is to do ETL activities like load your data, you can do that by using Kinesis Firehose. Now, these are sub-components of your AWS Kinesis, okay? And then you have a separate component called as your data analytics, that is Kinesis data analytics, which lets you analyze streams of data with SQL or even with Java if you want to. How it works? Basically, you have to consider 3 pointers here. One is your Kinesis data streams, Kinesis Firehose, and your Kinesis data analytics. So assume that you have a camera through which you are capturing certain streams of data, right? And now this stream of data, basically what you have to do is you have to move to your video streams, that is Kinesis video streams. Here you can ingest this data, right? Store it, encrypt it, and even add indexes to it for batch analytics. Once that happens, then you can move it to your machine learning or cognitive services that AWS offers. Amazon Recognition is one service that lets you process your video streams, and these streams can be processed by your recognition service. Amazon SageMaker is something that gives you your machine learning insights on this data, and even that can be controlled by using these services. Okay. So this was about AWS Kinesis. But wait, what is the output that you can expect when you talk about all the process that I just mentioned, right? Whether you talk about your real-time operations or whether you talk about your batch-driven machine learning applications, even video processing, all these things can be processed or given result to you by using your Kinesis service. And then we have our AWS ElastiCache. Now this is probably the last of databases that we'd be discussing today. Okay, so let's try and understand what it is. So as the name suggests, it's a cache, right? So when you say cache, what it does is if you have in-memory data requirements on your cloud, right, which are open source in nature, your ElastiCache takes care of it. This again lets you run and scale the data stores with ease so that you do not have to worry about the data that you're moving in. When do we use ElastiCache? ElastiCache is used in places where you need high performance, right? So when you say high performance or extreme performance, we are referring to quick latency again, right? And you have applications that require like sub-milliseconds of response, right? And you want end-to-end optimized stacks running on your customer dedicated nodes. Amazon ElastiCache is something that would actually let you do these things, and it does that at a blazing speed. This again is a fully managed service that you have in your hand, right? And you can scale at will to ensure that you do not have to worry about the traffic issues that are there. It has certain set of engines, whether you talk about ElastiCache, which can be for your Redis, for your Memcached, and probably these are the two it supports, right? So this was the final set of database service that we have. Let us get into the demo part, and probably then we can see what we can do there. I'm not going to go ahead and launch or spawn a full-fledged database service, but let me walk you through it, how the process works. Okay, so let's just go back to the demo part and discuss how you can actually go ahead and launch a relational database using AWS, right? Okay, so in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get into my RDS service. That is my relational database service that is there in my hand. Okay, so guys, let's just go ahead and create a database here, right? So I have two options, right? I have my Amazon cloud where I can create it. This is in-house is what I would call it. And the other option obviously would be on my on-premises, right? So what are these two options? This is where you create a cloud store on top of your instance of RDS. So probably this would be, if I'm not wrong, this would again be your EC2 instance, because that is the service that gives you your virtual machines here. And then you can do it your on-premise version as well. You can have your VMware data centers. You can choose that. Since we are using AWS free tier, let's stick to the EC2 version that we have, right? Now there are two options. This is an important point that you should know. Okay. So you have one, your standard create, and the other one is your easy create, something that I mentioned while we were discussing databases, right? So when you talk about the standard create, right, you will set up all the configuration options. Now these could include your availability, security, backups, and maintenance. We'll use the standard one so that we can go through all this process. Easy create, what it does is whatever is the best that AWS feels that would suit in the requirements, it would by default create that and roll it out. Okay, so what are the engines that we have on our hand? We have engines like your Amazon Aurora, right? Amazon Aurora, and this next one is MySQL, which is a simple type of database that we have on our hands, in our plates, right? Next is your MariaDB, right? You have your PostgRE SQL, Oracle, and even your Microsoft SQL Server. So these are the databases that I can choose from, right? And when I choose these databases, I also have an option of selecting its subversion. For now, let me just go ahead and select MySQL. So when you say MySQL, right, you have these versions that are there on your plate. So depending upon the kind of application that you want to launch, right, you can choose any one of these versions that is there, right? So by default, it has selected MySQL 8.17. Let's just go for a lower version. We are gonna launch it, but we are not gonna go ahead and use it any which way. So let this version be selected here for now. Okay. What are the templates, right? So guys, these are three important points, right? You have your production, you have your dev test, and you have your free tier. So what is a production environment? So guys, when you talk about production environment, it is something that your end customer would be using it, right? So in that case, your availability becomes very important. You cannot let your data go down for a while as well, right? So in that case, high availability data centers are advisable. You want to spawn it on resources that are always available. So when you choose production, that is what you'll get. But again, this does not fall under your free tier. You'll be charged for it. And this is where you'll actually spawn up a server for yourself, right? Dev test is somewhere, basically it is similar to your free tier, right? But it is intended for people where you want to actually go ahead and test this database or whatever data you put on top of it in the development environment, right? So it is for the testing phase. Now, if you talk about your free tier, it's understandable that this would be with meager and minimal resources. What you read here is it says use RDS free tier to develop new applications, to test existing applications and gain hands-on. So this is for your practice sake, guys, right? I mean, This would be with the minimal resources and you won't be charged anything for it. Let's stick to the free tier one for now, right? What are the settings, right, guys? What is the identifier? What is the name of the database that I want? Database, what I want. I'm sorry for that. Okay. So this is basically will tell you what is the name of a database should be like. What are the credentials required? Try to log in for the master user of your database. So you would be wanting an admin access here, right? What is the password that I should set up? Let me just go ahead and type something here. Maybe something like great learning. Let me try it again. So something like great learning @ So guys, what is the DB instance that you want? Do you want it burstable, right? Do you want it in memory or standard optimized? By default, I'm getting it burstable. These are my general purpose instances that give optimized performance to you. But if you want, you can burst it up to a greater extent for a limited amount of time. Standard and memory ones would be costlier. Don't fall under the free tier option that I have. What is the kind of storage I want? It can be provisioned IOPS or even general purpose, right? Allocated storage, I can choose something that I want. I can go for like 20. I can even go for 10. It does not matter really right now. Okay. And now multi-DZ deployment, right? Multi-AZ deployment. Why is this option here? Say for example, if I were to move it into production, I would be requiring more availability, right? Under free tier, I do not have an option to choose this. But if I want to create a standard backup in some particular region, in that case, I can use multi-AZ deployment as well. Okay. So that is what we can do here if you want to, but we are not going to go ahead and do that. And the reason is very simple. Right now, we are not concerned about that larger scale application that we have on our mind, right? So default VPC, yes, I can create my own VPC if I want to. VPC is nothing but your virtual private cloud, right? So basically when you try to spawn any resource, it has to fall under particular subnet, particular network in hand, right? Where do I get that network from? How do I get that network? I get that network by creating VPC. It is nothing but a virtual private cloud, a networking service. So it creates a subnet for me or a virtual network for me. Okay. So let it create a default VPC, right? Password authentication, authenticate using database password. So whatever password I've entered, I can authenticate using that password. I can even set up an database authentication. So when you say IAM, right, identity and access management, basically you can create a role, right, or create a user that can access this particular resource. So you can do that as well. But we have already given in password, so let's stick to that. Do I need to add in additional configuration details if I want to? So you have these options. You can go ahead and add these. Let's not do that. And now I'm going to just go ahead and say create. Okay, so the passwords do not match. I was expecting that to happen. Now let's see if I can match these. And I'm just going to go ahead and say create. Let's just say auto-generated password. I'm going to just go ahead and say create. So there you go. Just like that, my instance would be up and running. It might take a few minutes for this instance to launch or this database instance to launch. And once it's done, it's up and ready for you to use. As I mentioned, I'm not going to go ahead and connect to this instance. For that, you'll have to SSH into it. And I don't want to SSH because for that, I'll have to again go ahead and download a putty generator and then actually go ahead and convert my PIM file into a more usable password that is understood by my putty and putty generator, right? So let's not do that. But I believe the part that I wanted to explain here is clear to you people. So let's just quickly go ahead and delete this later. I'm not going to do that because I'll have to wait for it to get created first. And after that, I can delete it now as well. I'm just going to go ahead and say delete. We have to type delete me. Okay. So this would be deleted even before it gets created. But I believe the gist is clear to you people and you understand what was expected out of it, right? Okay, so this is pretty much it, right?
If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I want to request you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any new update or video releases from Great Learning. If you enjoyed this video, show us some love and like this video. Knowledge increases by sharing, so make sure you share this video with your friends and colleagues. Make sure to comment on the video for any query or suggestions and I will respond to your comments.